So,
Yeah.
okay, so as soon as I start the questions, there'll be eye rolling up here, but we get rolling after a while. And some of these questions have come from you over the years, and of course it's hard to answer them, so we're going to start with gentlemen.
Yes.
If you had to
My
pick-
name is Jeff Hamilton.
My name is Jeff Hamilton.
I've already lost control. It's terrible. How many of you were here the year that we started out on the questions and Houston Person was here and I said, Houston, would you like to answer that question? No.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, if you had to pick one musician, and this is hard, this is impossible, but just for me. If you had to pick one musician that influenced your playing the most, who would it be?
Oh, jeez.
I hand it right to Cameron.
I went through about 10 names and landed on John Clayton. And the reason is that we were at Indiana University, in case you couldn't tell, together in the early 70s, and I wanted to play with Ray Brown and Oscar Peterson and the Count Basie Orchestra and Louis Herman. And John said, well, here's how you're going to do it. You have to buy all the CDs and you have to play to them, I have to say CDs, LPs, and play to them and transcribe everything, you have to learn everything about them. And John really transformed me from being a dumb farm boy Hoosier drummer to a musician that actually could get on the bandstand with the people that I wanted to play with. So I would say John Clayton really set the path for me in his wisdom at being a year older than me.
And there's an on and off switch.
Ken doesn't have an on and off.
I was going to say you, but forget it. Actually, I would say Duke Ellington, because that, as soon as I heard my first Duke Ellington record, that opened up the whole world of jazz and all the possibilities therein. And that's never stopped, actually. So that did it for me, actually.
I'd say, even though I'm touched and honored by what my best friend Jim Hamilton just said, the guy that came before him was Ray Brown. I think most of you know that. That was a huge influence on me. And at 16, he taught a class at UCLA called Workshop in Jazz Bass. I had just taken classical lessons and started that with another gentleman. And when he told me that he knew Ray Brown and told me about this class, that was my last classical lesson with him. I saved $65 and enrolled in the course with Ray Brown. And Ray got me to go back to classical and also lessons on electric bass, and he really had a huge impact on my life.
Well, not as an instrumentalist like these gentlemen here. Vocally, my influence, starting out as a singer, was not jazz at all. It was R&B, Donny Hathaway, and people like Stevie Wonder, because jazz for me came much later. And of course, Ella Fitzgerald was my first. She was definitely the first lady of jazz. I didn't know anything about her at the time, but somehow I got hold of a recording, and I was in my 20s by then. So and it really hit me. I had no idea. I heard jazz because I grew up in New Orleans, so I heard jazz all the time. But singing it was something that I never thought I'd even attempt. After singing in church, starting singing in church, and then later on going to R&B and listening to pop music and enjoying that, and then the this jazz thing shows up. I said, okay, well, I hear this in the French quarters. So this lady, first lady of jazz, they're calling her, you know. So I'm checking her out, and later on I go to Melton May. Jeff and I were just talking. He used to give me some road stories about Melton May. And, yeah, I can't tell you. But yeah, because he was one of my, the Ella Fitzgerald, Melton May, and Sarah Vaughan.
Okay.
Top jazz people. So those guys were my and they're still, I still put on recordings as if I was 12 years old, and just mind-boggling as to what they've left us. Incredible talent, and it's so different now. It's old school is definitely the way that I want to continue taking in jazz vocalizing. That's it. I don't want to say any more about that.
Safe. Okay, this is another hard one, but in recent years, I guess recent meaning maybe the last 10 years or so, how has your playing and singing changed? How has it evolved? And you can even go back further than that if you like. Want to start down at this end with John, or you want to think more?
I think that's a question that's better answered, for me, better answered by the people that listen to my music. Because I really don't pay attention to, I don't analyze my stuff.
But what do you, we're all working on something, or a bunch of things, through our lives. What do you think you've accomplished now that you maybe didn't do as a younger artist?
I don't know. I mean, if I think back on 10 years ago, I was still interested in the same things that I'm interested in now. I'm kind of doing the same things that I did then 10 years ago, only I'm trying to make sure that it's now, that it's representative of me expressing myself today, because that was yesterday. So I still, with Jeff Hamilton co-lead the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, we're adding new music to the repertoire, of course. Of course, we still obviously have the Clayton brothers. Likewise, we're adding new music, there are new ideas and things, but I think my MO has finally sort of settled in to where I'm happy with the way things are going. I just want more of it. So I'm sorry I can't answer that question.
No, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. I got your answer.
I agree. But it's kind of true. It is hard for us to say, because we're in the moment. We're always working on things. That never stops. You're trying to expand your repertoire, the way you approach music. Oh, my theme song. Are we doing an ad for feminine hygiene right now? What's going on?
No, it's the local mortuary.
But I'm proud to say I finally reached a goal. I don't know if you guys saw this, the latest Jazz Times. I won this year's top honor in the best in his price range category. I'm proud of that. But no, it's hard to say. I could tell you that when we all started, and I think we all were this way. You start by imitating, people that you admire, and then you grow out of that, and you develop your own sound and style, and that's once you start that process, there's a continuation of that for the rest of your life, and you're just trying to hone, your own personality into your music and expand, the horizons of who you're playing with and what kinds of music, and so that's been what I've, been trying to do.
I think that if we were to turn that question around to everyone in the room, you'd have to go back through 10 years of all the people you've met and what they did and said to influence who you are as a person. So we all grow at what we're doing. We have different focuses on what we're trying to achieve. But we're all growing as people, we're all growing as musicians. As jazz musicians, we play our personality. So as we grow as people, that's going to come out in our music. So it's really hard to identify exactly what those things are. One of the things that I've talked to my mentor about, John Von Olen, the Baron from the Stan Kenton band in the early 70s and Woody Herman's band in 67. I saw him recently, and he's 72 years old now. And we're sitting across the dinner table from each other, and we just kind of looked at each other for a minute because we're a lot alike as far as approaching music. I learned a great deal from him. And he said, "You know what it is, Jefferson? He says, you reach a point where you just don't give a damn anymore." And he meant when you hit the drum set, you don't care what the jazz critics are going to say about you. You don't care what the person in the front row knitting is doing. You don't care what everybody else in the bandstand is saying or thinking about you, because you have a job to do, and it's your responsibility to produce 100% of who you are, because that's what the people came to pay the money for, to hear you and what kind of day you've had. So I think as you mature as an artist, you just don't give a damn anymore. You just do what you have to do, and you know that that's going to be 100% of what you can offer to everyone else in the bandstand, almost, and everyone else in the room. But no, Kim does that too, and I think we kind of reach that. And it's not that we're being arrogant, it's just we want to give you the best of what we have, so we've got to be honest with ourselves and not worry about Leonard Feather and Don Heckman and what they're going to write about us, you know. So, or somebody that comes up and says, "I don't like that thing that you're doing this year with the hi-hat." Well, I'm sorry you don't, but it took me 40 years to get that down. And that's the best I got. So I guess I won't be seeing you next year, and I'll give you your money back for the damn CD.
Can I just add one thing to what he said? You know, about 10 years ago, actually, one of my favorite authors is a man named Charles Bukowski. I love his stuff. And there's collections of letters to and from him. And somebody wrote to him saying, "What's the best advice you could give to an aspiring writer?" And he wrote back 2 words. He said, "Don't try." Meaning don't try too hard, don't force it. And I think that's what Jeff is touching on. Like, you just have to relax, not worry about other people, worry about yourself. You know, if you please yourself on the bandstand, then you've accomplished something, you know. And that's what you strive to work towards.
I can't answer the question. That's a hard one.
Kim took long enough.
Yeah. I mean, all I can say is I feel more comfortable now as a singer than I did a decade or 2 decades ago. It took me a long time to get used to singing in front of people, and I'm more terrified speaking in front of people. So, but yeah, it took me years to get a hold of that and feel comfortable singing in front of an audience. But now, I still get nervous, but it's a different kind of nervousness, you know, if you can understand what I'm saying. Because for me, there's always going to be that slight tension and nervousness and butterflies in your stomach before you perform, before I perform, anyway. But I'm more comfortable as far as delivering to an audience and relating to the band that's backing me up. And I hear more things musically now, and I pay more attention to the whole room, you know, the audience, but I don't key in on anybody's face. You know, I look around a little bit, but I don't look anybody in the face, you know. Unless somebody's sitting there, like the lady last night, looking at her watch, and you know, somebody's turning their back, and you know. So, but yeah, I just feel more comfortable now, and I feel like I have a place in the world of jazz, you know, so to speak. You know, I feel like I can sort of hold my own now better than I could 30 years ago. You know, I haven't done it nearly as long as these guys.
Watch it.
But yeah, I just feel more comfortable. That's all I can say about it.
What do you mean you're uncomfortable speaking? I was just going to say, sometimes I chime in and sometimes I don't, but I was just going to say, my playing's changed from being married to Mike Wofford for 11 years now, because he is the master of saying more with less notes and making it mean more. And when you come up through, I started playing jazz at 5 with my dad, who was a jazz guitarist, but I went through the whole classical from 7 years in Cleveland to all the training and all the etudes and all the classical repertoire and orchestra play and 2 degrees in classical music, because my folks were worried that I wasn't going to ever work if I didn't get either a college job or an orchestra job. But when you have all that technique, when you don't have anything to say, you tend to use that technique instead of substance. So now, watching Mike's process, my lifelong thing, especially the last 10 years, when I started to hear that I was overplaying, now I cut out as much as I can cut out, and put in what I really feel and what should be there, without just covering it up with stuff that audiences say, "Ooh, she can play fast," or whatever it is. So, moving right along, you're going to have an opportunity to